You may be currently asking yourself, what exactly is free trade? Well, I know I've heard of fair trade before, but what are the actual pros and cons? Throughout the course of this video, we hope to build your knowledge on the subjects with a little help from outside sources, statistics, and graphs. Fair trade is defined as a movement whose goal is to help producers in developing countries to get a fair price for their products, so as to reduce poverty, provide for the ethical treatment of workers and farmers, and promote environmentally sustainable practices.
Pros. This type of policy has good pay and community benefits. Purchasing fair trade products ensures that people who created them, from weavers to farmers, enjoy a living wage that's often much higher than what they would typically earn. Fair trade cooperatives also allow participants to invest money in their communities, supporting things such as education and medical care. Fair trade also promotes environmentally sustainable practices, which encourages recycling and use of natural materials and ban the use of certain pesticides. Workers having nothing to fear, either due to the regulations of safety and protection. All the machines and the equipment used in the process must meet the rigorous standards. Dangerous substances that might be exposed to a non-fair trade business, such as toxic fertilizers, are prohibited. Managers of fair trade businesses protect children, ensuring they receive an education and are not abused. Discrimination based on factors such as religion and gender is also banned in fair trade businesses, providing an equal platform for all workers. Fair trade promotes much more to the style of living that all people should be accustomed to. Under the Fair Trade Labeling Organization, requires compliance with domestic and international labor law, including prohibition of child and forced labor and child trafficking. Ben & Jerry's is a reputable ice cream dealer, has gone publicly saying they will start using fair trade supplies. This is the first ice cream maker to do such a thing. As of January in 2015, all pint of both ice cream and frozen yogurt are made with fair trade sugar, cocoa, vanilla, coffee, and bananas. Ben & Jerry's are happy to use such resources. The company is deep in ethical behavior and decided it was the best choice to support farmers around the world. Ben & Jerry's is committed to paying their suppliers with what they deserve, which is a fair pay for a hard day of work. As a result, for a fair pay, the farmers will use environmentally friendly practices to produce the resources needed for fair working conditions and take a leadership role in their community. This is the essence of what fair trade is all about.
Fair trade is all about improving lives. But we don't do that through charity. There's no handout in the fair trade movement. In so many countries, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, the laws protecting workers are very, very weak, or they're not enforced. So for much of the agricultural working population around the world, life is very hard and it's not very safe. That's what fair trade is trying to change. In Ghana, for example, historically child labor has been a huge problem. We find that fair trade cocoa co-ops are building schools, creating scholarship funds, and sending kids on to high school and on to college. In Rwanda, we find communities that have invested in clean water and women's health. In Uganda, vanilla farmers get 8% of the final export price on average. But by connecting with the fair trade buyers here in the U.S., these small family farmers in Uganda have been able to get a fabulously higher price because they're not selling to local middlemen. So with the higher price, they in turn have been able to invest in the quality of the product. And the vanilla now is just incredible. The biggest change that we see on large fair trade farms and in the apparel factories is they're working in a safer working condition. They're getting bonuses as a result of fair trade. Workers are able to sit at the table and address problems with management. So there's a level of confidence that you just don't see outside in other workplaces. And so there's this invisible dividend in the fair trade world that you can't see, but you know it when you talk to a farmer. It's hope and pride and dignity because people are solving their own problems through fair trade.
Although fair trade may seem arguably unflawed on the surface, there are indeed downfalls. There are descriptions available that categorize fair trade as a system of trade that aims to empower and give financial security to the little guy, when in reality, participating individuals and organizations must pay an initial joining fee and an annual fee, both of which are expenses in the several hundred to thousands range. Such fee is costly and makes it extremely challenging for developing countries with limited incomes to participate. Many groups and people who would like to participate in a fair trade organization simply do not have the financial backing to obtain a certificate, leaving power in the hand of the Western civilizations. Fair trade sounds absolutely brilliant on paper. In the United Kingdom alone, annual sales of fair trade products top $2.1 billion annually. A problem that producers often run into is, do consumers genuinely care? More so, are consumers willing to pay a higher rate for a product that was created in just a better environment? A fair trade labeled t-shirt can be made from fair trade cotton, but then be put together in the heart of a sweatshop. Mark Engler, author of New Internationalist, writes, consumers who think they are choosing an ethically untainted product might actually be buying clothing sewn with child labor or finished in a dangerous, overheated factory. Trade is about long-term relationships, not just between producers and consumers, but between entire countries and regions of the world. Achieving truly fair trade means seeing the world in a different way, as a planet of partnership and mutual prosperity, rather than plunder and exploitation. Fair trade is not about paying 50 cents more for your coffee. It's about caring for your neighbors, even when they're on the other side of the world. Free trade is defined as a policy in which governments do not put any restriction on exports or imports. It is the unrestricted sale and purchase of goods and services between nations.
Today, we will be first discussing free trade pros. Free trade is just beginning to scratch the surface and get the worldwide attention in order to start inflicting change around the globe. For years, there have been ongoing negotiations to settle an agreement. Free trade promotes a healthy economy for all social classes. The biggest debate has been centered on the Trans-Pacific Partnership fiasco. If completed, it will be the first step in conducting a globally accepted free trade policy. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is an agreement between 10 countries. It has been under negotiations for about a decade now, and negotiations are almost complete. It is expected to eliminate tariffs on goods and services and tear down non-tariff barriers. Rarely do economists all agree on one subject, but in this case, the majority of economists agree on the wisdom of free trade. The House and Senate recently approved versions of the legislation which would enable Obama to take the fast track to negotiating a deal. Most economists support free trade in both the short and long term. By removing tariffs altogether, it would lead to an easier trade process. The cost of importing goods into a country would decrease, in turn lowering the price of manufactured goods. According to a well-established institute, such as the Peterson Institute for International Economics, they estimate that by detaching barriers and implementing free trade policies, the economy would increase by $500 billion. Middle-class jobs will be created over the long term because as businesses grow, more people will be required to work in factories. We learned that through supply and demand. Once an agreement is finally completed, full employment can be attained much easier because people will be working in industries where we can import goods from countries producing them at a cheap price. Finally, by implementing free trade, each country will be contributing to a healthier lifestyle, which forever has been sought after, because each country will be promoting innovation and competition within their borders and outside of them. Innovation and competition lead to economic growth. The hope is that corruption is reduced as well.
So make the case to the average working class American about why the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Asian trade deal, is good for them. What's the argument?
The argument is, number one, that's the biggest market in the world. Number two is those countries are already selling to us. I keep on pointing out there are a lot of Japanese cars here in the United States, almost no U.S. cars in Tokyo. Number three is that if we don't write the rules, China will write the rules out in that region. We will be shut out. American businesses, American agriculture, that will mean a loss of U.S. jobs. Number four, export jobs typically pay better. And the last point I would make is that when you look at some of the provisions that we're negotiating in TPP, we are raising the standards in many countries, in places like Malaysia or Vietnam, in ways that directly help workers there, directly help the environment, directly go after some of the trends that are causing climate change. And if you're a progressive, you want higher standards, enforceable standards in those regions.
As we discussed earlier in the year, reducing opportunity costs are beneficial to anyone financially since they allow economic flexibility. Free trade promotes specialization in order to attain a competitive advantage. Interestingly enough, China's urban income distribution among the middle class earned approximately 71% of the median American income during the recession in 2008, proving that free trade is indeed successful. Globally, there is always reason for concern regarding free trade since the majority of countries exercise different economies of scale. However, since 1945, world trade has increased by an average of 7%. Currently, free trade continues to increase American household incomes by lowering cost of products and increasing wages. Developing countries across the globe are also reaping benefits since free trade assists bringing countries out of poverty and allowing them to bargain on equal terms with larger countries in order to perpetuate success. We must, as human beings on this planet, track the progress of free trade globally because before we know it, free trade will be the leading determinant to meaningful employment everywhere.
Free trade, though it sounds great, causes more job losses than gains in the United States, especially in higher paying jobs. Movement towards free trade brings the wage down of the unskilled worker in the United States to where the wage of the unskilled worker in China and India are. Most of the trade agreements for the U.S. are terrible deals. The reality of the agreement is that they are not smart business ventures. They are made to help other countries even though it hinders our own growth and economy. Obama's Trans-Pacific Partnership is a terrible idea. This deal will offshore U.S. jobs and increase income inequality. It also contributes to income inequality in high-wage countries because it promotes cheaper goods from lower-wage countries. The wealthy pay less to the less wealthy. The cost of medicine would be jacked up and the U.S. would be exposed to unsafe foods and other products. Workers not only experience a drop in pay, but are exploited and are put in harmful situations. If the Trans-Pacific Partnership is made, most gains will go to workers making more than $88,000 a year, increasing the gap of income inequality. There would be restrictions put on products such as tobacco, which the U.S. would not like. The U.S. would also want to be able to protect its intellectual property rights, which would be difficult after the deal goes through. Policies such as Buy American that are needed to create green jobs would also be banned. Corporations will be empowered to attack the environmental and health safeguards.